Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. Police and security guards. What strange or odd things have you seen at night? Please remember to like, share, hype, comment, subscribe, listen, and ask for shoutouts. And have a great day.
I worked nights. While on duty, it was an extremely slow night. The only thing out were the stars. There was fresh snow on the ground. There were no street lamps or illumination of any sort. That's why I liked it. Every cop has their secluded go-to spot on patrol. Well, mine was an abandoned campground. Anytime I needed to think or finish some paperwork, I would go to there. I would go there frequently, so I felt comfortable there. Not on this night. As I was sitting there, I felt as if I were being watched. I felt extreme unease. I would check my mirrors every 30 or so seconds because of it. And if I wanted to look out the side, I would press on the brake because it was dark enough that the red light would show the surroundings. Finally, I started focusing on my paperwork and not on my paranoia. About 10 minutes go by. Rapidly, my car started shaking violently as if someone or something were trying to tip it over. My paperwork, food, and duty gear were flying all over my vehicle. I couldn't see anything, and so I did what anyone else would do and put the car in drive and sped out of there as fast as I could. I drove to the place with the most lights I could find. I didn't want to be in the dark. I tried to make it, since but how could something be that close to the car and me not see it? We have elk and bear where I live, so that had to be it, right? When I stopped freaking out, I got out of my vehicle to assess the damage. The force that moved the car had to be of left a dent or scratches. When I looked, both sides of the rear of the vehicle were covered in handprints. I freaked out. No one ever goes out there, ever. I called another buddy on his phone to come take a look. By what I described, he was just equally freaked out. We both gathered up the courage to go back and look for footprints in the snow. When we got there, all you see is my tire tracks and not a single footprint. I haven't gone back since and never will. We have this legend called the White Wives. They're ghostly women in white night robes that haunt the open fields and moors. Variations of this myth actually exist in a lot of places. I say myth because we know exactly what they are. When the weather conditions are right, we sometimes get very small shards of fog that rise up from the wet spots in the fields and moors. So, instead of a big fog bank, you get a small patch of dense fog the size of a horse or a person. The wind can blow these little shards of fog across the fields, causing them to billow like ghostly white robes in the moonlight. One night, I'm cycling home past the fields on the edge of town when I catch movement from the corner of my eye. I look, and it's a goddamn ghost keeping pace with me, billowing white robes, deep sunken pits where I imagined a face staring at me. And the thing is keeping pace, just rushing through the fields parallel to my bike, maybe 12 feet to my side. It took me maybe half a minute before I got a hold of myself and realized I was actually seeing a white wife for the first time. I learned two things that night. I totally understated where ghost myths come from. It looks so unnatural, the way it keeps pace with me due to the wind, the way it kept changing shape like robes billowing in the wind, the way the moonlight made it glow. The second is that phrases like terror taking an icy grip on your heart are not just fancy words. When I looked to my side and saw that thing rushing along, I felt like something reached into my chest and squeezed my heart in a cold fist for a second. I used to work as a security guard. I drove a vehicle around a pretty large city and had about 60 sites a night to check on. Each had different instructions. The worst by far was this old abandoned hospital. It was an 8-story building. Only 2 of the floors were in use by a university for psychological treatment. Every night at 2 a.m., I had a 20-minute tour there, where I was supposed to search the entire building and check all of the doors. This place was creepy as fuck. The top floor was all padded, quiet rooms with big steel doors, and one of the floors was an old surgery ward with a bunch of old equipment laying around. And then there was a tunnel in the basement with all of their gas or water pipes running on the walls. There were a bunch of murals painted on the walls of kids playing, which had been warped from the heat, and I could always swear I heard footsteps down there. Surprisingly, nothing besides the building being creepy ever freaked me out. One time I did find a sink faucet running in a bathroom on an abandoned floor, but nothing came from it. I still get the chills thinking about the place, though. I was volunteering during the summer back in high school at a nearby theater. They were going to be doing a musical. Always wondered why all the singers smoked heavily, and I had some carpentry experience, so I was helping out their tech crew building scenery. There was a loading dock behind this little kink of a hallway, which led directly onto stage left. And on the loading dock was a couple of Coke machines where people tended to congregate, usually on their way out for a smoke or coming back from one. I passed them going between the tech building, where we built the scenery, and the theater, where we installed it probably 20 to 30 times a day. I'm working late one evening, and I'm running through with a couple cans of spackle to do the drywall on stage, and the guys are waiting on me. I catch a dark-haired woman in a white lace gown standing there just staring at one of the Coke machines, an instant before I barge into her. I apologize and give a quick smile as I jank around her and keep going. It takes all of 2 seconds start to finish, and I'm not really paying attention to her since I've got other things on my mind. As I'm working, I mentioned that it seemed a bit early for dress rehearsals. My boss, Richard, gives me an odd look and says dress rehearsals aren't for another 2 weeks. I mention the woman in the dress, and Richard goes blank on me. He takes me out to the theater's administration wing and points to a wall of portraits, where a picture of the woman is. The children's theater next door had been named after her. She was a lifelong actress who had married the man who built the theater I was standing in. She died in 1985. I was doing guard duty in the army one night. We had some training exercise at an abandoned camp facility, and my buddy and I had been assigned to watch over some vehicles that we had parked in a large empty warehouse. We were the only ones in the camp facility, as there was nothing else valuable that had to be watched overnight. My buddy and I had tied hammocks between the vehicles to get a bit more comfortable for the overnight watch, when we suddenly saw a pack of wild dogs standing outside the doors to the warehouse. Now, these doors were wide open, and nothing was stopping the dogs from coming in at all, but they just stood there, 15 to 20 dogs lined up at the entrance to the abandoned warehouse, watching us. Suddenly, as if someone had flipped a switch, they all started barking and howling in our direction. I say our direction because when I discussed it later with him, we both agreed that it felt like the dogs were barking at something else in the entirely abandoned warehouse. My buddy and I were completely terrified. First, that we might have gotten swarmed by the dogs, and second, at whatever those dogs were barking at. We started to radio for help, but suddenly the pack of dogs stopped barking and left. It was as if they had never been there. That was a long night of guard duty, I can tell you.
All right, one special shout out today. Again, thanks for listening, guys. And yeah, it was snowy, but it's nice out today, and just a lot of shoveling, but all good. But this one goes out. It was a long message too, so I do read them. Was 7 Lily 5 Zat. I think that's how it is. You explained yourself very well, and I'm glad I could be any part of your healing process and helping you feel a little more at ease when you can while you go through all of that. But there was a request for a shout out. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. For Rhonda Ray, also known as Ra. Just wanted to wish you a very happy birthday. And again, thank you for the continued support. And we look forward to bringing you more quality entertainment every day. So see you guys tomorrow. Have a great one.
In college, I was a late afternoon shift, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. security guard at a chemical factory on Sunday. Don't know what kind of chemicals they made, but it was comprised of 3 buildings, and whose prior use was an orange juice factory. It was cool, and the guy who would replace at 11 was this big 6'3" black guy. He would sometimes get dropped off early, and we would just chill and talk. Well, I had to walk the property at 10:30 p.m. Every time I walked, I had no problems. Here's the thing. Of the 3 buildings, 2 were for actual mixing, heating, and emulsification, etc., and 1 building had administrative offices. That administrative office was always closed since it was the weekend. Well, one time, Big Black Guy gets dropped off at 11:15 and he decides to walk with me at 10:30, so the administrative building is last. And as we're walking toward it, everything is off. We circle the building, and as we're walking back to the office light turns on. This was the first time I've ever seen this. And since no one is supposed to be there, I pull out my keys and start walking toward the building to enter and see if someone is inside. At this point, Big Black Guy grabs my arm and tells me, "Don't go in there, just leave it." I turn and look at him, and his face looks dead serious, and he's looking right at me. Pardon the cliche, like he's seen a ghost. You gotta realize, I'm 19 years old, still a kid inside really, and not afraid of anything, but looking at his face made me nope the out of there. When we got back to the guard shack, he told me that once on his walk around 3 a.m., the same thing happened. He went in the office and it felt really cold. He turned off the light, and as he left the building it turned on again. He re-enters, and he's about to turn it off again, and he said something pushed him from behind. Immediately, he turns around and exits the building, and tells me he'll never step foot in that building ever again. I talked to one of the old workers there about it, and he said that when the place was a juice factory, that building housed a large juicer, and someone had an accident and died. Don't know if it's true, but the old worker told me he would never go in that building at night either. A few weeks later I quit, so never had to deal with that again. Was an overnight security guard for about 3 years, before the 2 pots of coffee a night and 3 hours of sleep per day caused a heart palpitation and the doctor said it was killing me. One night during the onset of winter, it was sprinkling a little bit, then stopped. The temp started dropping precipitously, and I heard the trees creaking on the other side of the trailer lot, food distribution warehouse. I looked out across the lot. I remember the day after tomorrow, when the Frost is seen as the villain, chasing people to the library. Yeah. I watched the Frost racing toward my little uninsulated shack across the lot. Crouching over my little space heater, I literally was scared. Also, one night during a crescent moon, the heavy cloud cover caused the top of the moon to look like a lighter flame in the sky. It took me literally a couple of minutes to figure out what it was. Freaked me out. Also, one night saw a huge green ball of fire. Still can't figure out what it was. I'm sure a meteor, but it freaked my shit out. Streak across the sky, like I could see the fire. One of my friends was a security guard in an upscale apartment building in Manhattan. During the day, they had doorman and an elevator man, but at night it was just him in an office near the main entrance. One night, someone legit kept pushing the ringer for one of the apartments, and whoever lived there wasn't answering. It turned out to be a doctor who said that one of the residents had asked him for a house call because she didn't feel well, but that for some reason she wasn't answering. He let him in and went to escort the doctor up to her apartment, but as they approached the elevator, the doctor said he changed his mind and would wait until morning, and he was sure she'd be fine until then. He left. My friend goes back to his office, and a little while later the main doors are signaled to open from the apartment of the woman who the doctor had been there to see. He assumed that she had just now noticed that her door had been buzzed and she was opening it for him. Unaware, he had decided to leave. My friend went up to explain that the doctor had come but then left. He knocked a few times and got no answer, since the woman had said she was sick, then signaled the door downstairs but wasn't answering the door now. He thought something really serious might be wrong. He entered her apartment and found her dead, even though she had just signaled from the control panel by the door. She had been dead for longer than that, like weeks. Residents who had staff like housekeepers could get door cards and keys for them to get in and out of the building instead of the doorman dealing with it. Most of the ones in the building were from the same agency, which was notorious for hiring Mexicans who weren't in the country legally. The police suspected the housekeeper had found the woman dead, but didn't want to call the police herself out of fear that she would be questioned and something would happen to her. They figured she probably came in that night using her card, so my friend wouldn't have noticed, called the doctor, tried to let him in, and then fled the building so police wouldn't deport her or something, but they never proved that. Weird story. I do night patrol for a 55 and up community, and I have one woman who is annoying. She will call the front gate to ask me if I can check to see if she left her glasses in her golf cart, take out her trash, open her water bottle, and other stupid shit like that. But there was one time I couldn't believe what happened. I was just finished locking up the pavilion, and I get a call from the front gate that someone was stuck in an elevator. I head over to the building we got a call from, and I see this lady in her golf cart. I asked her if she called the front gate, and she said she did, but never said she was stuck in an elevator, but at the building. She used the elevator phone to call, so we thought someone was stuck. Now here comes the fire department, and they're pissed off. This guy ripped into the woman about a false call and threatened to tow her golf cart. He states he can smell the battery is leaking acid, and she said she will get it back to her stall. The fire department leaves now. This woman is expecting me to push her golf cart 4 buildings away. She's complaining, saying the other guards would do it, and I say that we are not allowed to lift anything over 5 pounds. She wants a ride back, but I don't want to give her one. I tell her to call her building rep, and she complains it is too late at 11:30. After about 20 minutes of listening to her complain, I decide to push her golf cart into the grass and give her a ride back. She then states the reason she was out so late was because she wanted to go to the bank. In my mind, I'm thinking, are you f***ing kidding me? We get to her place and she starts complaining about my security company and how a unit got robbed in her building. Now I know this woman is crazy because we would have been told about it if that really did happen. I worked at a group home for juvenile delinquents. The building we were in was a 1900s mansion turned orphanage before focusing on delinquents in the 70s. Pretty much all the long-time workers thought it was haunted. One worker had died from a heart attack and was revived. After that, he said he could see dark parts of the building. There were also incidents of workers seeing orbs, hearing kids laughing, and residents would report hearing noises in certain rooms similar to things heard by other residents they have never met before. Supposedly, one worker even saw a full-body apparition run through a door. Aside from hearing crashes, I never saw evidence of there was one weird thing that happened to me personally on a midnight shift. At around 6 a.m., I went downstairs to the kitchen to make coffee. As soon as I crossed the threshold into the kitchen, the door itself was open. The air felt heavy and I could hear voices and a dog barking. I checked the radio and it was off. The building itself was on a hill and far from the sidewalk, but I looked outside in case somebody was wandering on our property. Nobody was out there. The voices weren't loud enough to be audible. I made the coffee, and as soon as I exited the kitchen, door still open, her voices stopped, and everything felt normal. Another time, when I worked midnight, something happened. Didn't freak me out, but sure scared my relief. At the time, we had a resident who was a runaway. That morning, my relief comes upstairs and is asking me if I am okay and seems worried. I'm fine. Turns out what happened is, while in the parking lot, he saw a window was broken. He came inside and saw a pair of scissors lying on the ground next to a door. He thought the kid had come back and tried to kill me. I had no idea he was even there. We figured he was probably trying to get a cell phone that had been confiscated and put in an office. Still kind of scary to think about what might have happened if I had gone downstairs and caught him. The kid was small, but he's one of the few people I've met that I would consider a sociopath. So I don't think he would have stabbed me if he thought it would help him. Not a police officer or security, I'm a machinist. I worked nights at a shop and was the lucky one that got to stay and lock up after everyone left for the night, usually between 2 and 3 a.m. We had 2 production buildings, one of them was fine, the other was creepy as shit. After everyone left, I would leave the main safe building and the secondary creepy building as first. As I walked in the back door and came into the machining area, most nights the mills and laser would bang in succession like something was running between them, hitting them with a stick on the way by, so I go to walk by through there with that going on. Making my way to the front of the building, where the reception area was to lock the front door, I would pass all the conference rooms. These doors on occasion would be open on my way through, but be closed when I came back by. There were usually banging and pops that could be heard in this area too. The reception area itself was the creepiest. Once I would get into the reception area to the front doors, all the sounds would stop, like it got really quiet, and it felt like I was being watched. I'd lock the doors and hightail it out. Once I got back to the shop floor, all the machines would bang in reverse of what they did when I would come in, like whatever was running the other day. Like I said, the other building never a noise other than airlines leaking or other usual shop noises. One night, I asked another machinist to stay after with me to help out with some stuff. I also brought a camera. This was before phones with cameras were popular. Poor guy was freaking out when the show in the second building started. I took pictures all over the building. The only one that came out abnormal was the reception area. It had at least 20 orbs in it. Needless to say, dude never stayed to help me close again. It was creepy, but I never felt in danger. Years ago, I used to work as a security guard in an abandoned site complex that is now a heritage-listed site. At the time, there was a company trying to sell the land, so one other and myself was employed to run the graveyard shift, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., to make sure kids didn't sneak in and burn the place down and generally mess it up. One night, around 2 a.m., when it was quite dark, the other guard and myself did our hourly patrol. While he circled counterclockwise, I went through the center of the 4 different buildings to check for holes in the fence. While I had my torch, I saw a young lady who couldn't have been more than 22 to 25 years old and quite pretty, although a little disheveled. She approached me and said that she was trying to find some men who had taken something from her. Of course, being the only one around, I asked her if there was anything I could do, including phoning the police to come by. She declined with a short smile and seemed pretty despondent. Figuring that she might try to hurt herself, I said that I was here if she needed help, but it was a dangerous area, so I would escort her out. At this point, she gave one of the most blood-curdling screams I've ever heard, and tears streaming down her face, a quicker change of mood I've never seen. Taken aback is the least of my feelings. She screamed, "I'll find them, I'll find them," before sprinting behind one of the buildings. It took me half a second to gather myself, but I started after her. Now, I seriously thought that A, she would harm herself, or someone else, or B, drugs are a hell of a thing. She disappeared behind one of the buildings, and not half a second later did my partner waltz out from behind that same building. He had not seen anyone run past, nor heard anything. That scream was loud. Long story short from here, it turns out that this ward was functioning before any of the normal guidelines came into force, and it was obvious people there were treated worse than animals. Apparently, it was not unheard of for the female psych patients to become pregnant, who knew where from, and subsequently their babies were taken from them at birth. I quit the next day, as did my partner. Nightclubs for me, thanks. Not so much working night shift myself, so much as my work continuing through the night. Around 7-ish years ago, I was working on a piece of software at my company which had camera recording functionality, but because of the platform and length of recording, it was actually taking stills every dozen or so seconds for a stop-motion film sort of thing. Anyway, one night I leave it, going to ensure it can 1. Record its maximum length, and 2. Remain stable over long periods of time. So in the morning I get in and sit down and review last night's footage for quality and stability's sake. Quiet and still office with lights on and a couple of people. People leave, lights turn off, darkness, darkness, darkness. But there in the faint light from outside coming in through the window, I see something in the office move. I start to go back and forth between frames when the lights went off and when they came back on, and it seems a chair had turned, all before anyone came in. I sat there and reviewed the footage for a bit before talking with my supervisor, who informed me that the last shift last night ended around 9 p.m., and no one had entered the office between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. I shrugged it off and continued my daily work, but before I left for the night, I left the camera recording again. Coming in the next day, I reviewed the footage, and again a chair or two had been turned. I told my supervisor again, who again assured me that no one was in last night, but now he, too, was curious and asked around and was told absolutely no one was in the office at night. So now my supervisor asked me to leave the camera recording each night, and every morning when we came in, we reviewed the footage, and every morning the footage showed chairs moved and turned. Some chairs had moved a few feet even. So on one of the last nights of us using this software, we pointed the camera directly at the row where the chairs kept moving. Then, with their no light shift, that night was pulled all the chairs to the front of the row to see where they'd be the next day. When we came in the next morning, it was evident they had been removed, as some had been turned and one had been rolled back against the wall roughly 20 feet from where we left it. Reviewing the camera footage showed nothing move smoothly, as it was 12-second frames, only a set of chairs in a cluster, then a set of turned and slightly moved chairs, and one single chair 20 feet away from the others. We never got a good explanation. We checked with all departments and the cleaning crew. No one had a reply that backed up why the chairs would move overnight.